Welcome to the 1000 Comics Podcast. It's your host, Matt Heath. How you doing? How you doing out there, folks? It's been a minute since I did my last podcast, and I've missed you. This pandemic has been rough. I haven't done a podcast in a little while because it's hard to have people over in a studio apartment with the whole rules in order. But luckily, I was able to record a show remotely, which I think you're really going to enjoy. First, I just wanted to say a little something about how I came up in broadcasting. I had a little show back in the day with my college roommate, Nate Lacey, back in the University of New Haven. Great school, great radio program, WNHU. Ran by some great people, and we had a great time, man, back then. And we did a rock radio show, mostly played rock music and played clips from The Simpsons, and we laughed our asses off, and we were basically the National Lampoons of the college radio at the school there. Maybe I'm romanticizing the era, but me and Nate, we called our show Kang and Kodos Taking Over, and that was my first gig in radio, and I friggin' loved it. The reason I bring this fellow up is because he was always a great buddy of mine, and he gave me a great lead to get a great interview with a man by the name of Ming Chen. Ming Chen is, if you don't know, a TV star on AMC's Comic Book Men. He was in Jay and Silent Bob Reboot. He was in Brian Johnson's horror movie Vulgar. He has his own podcast studio, A Shared Universe, which he shares with Mike Zapsik, where he does a podcast, The Ming and Mike Show. Great guy, great interview, and I was really excited to talk to him. But first, before I did this monologue, I kind of wanted to get in the spirit of interviewing one of the comic book men, and I was watching the episode where the comic book men bowl against the clerks from the movie Clerks. And it really made me miss bowling. Now, I may be just a simple millennial fool, who knows, but to me, the pandemic is winding down. I think bowling alleys should be open. I mean, it's a sport you do 6 feet apart. You could wear the mask. You use your own ball, and you disinfect. You know what I didn't think of? The shoes, man. The bowling shoes. You know what? People might have to start bringing their own bowling shoes. Or is it non-essential? Is bowling is it a part of the new normal to not have bowling alleys? That's a dark future, in my opinion. Sounds Orwellian to me. But maybe I'm just being selfish. Am I being like Trump? You know, I just don't understand why I can't go bowling. Is this something he would say? Am I leaning into that too much? Who knows? You know what? I'm no politician. I'm no doctor either. So my opinion on it is null and void. If they want to keep the bowling alley shut down, keep them shut down. But I think bowling is essential to the American dream. Anyways, a word from our sponsor, sweetheal.com. You can get 20% off all orders over $50 if you go to sweetheal.com. And I'm telling you, this is a great site because you can buy hand sanitizer. You can buy hand sanitizer to wipe your hands, rub all over a bowling ball, do whatever the hell you want with it. You can rub it on your forearms too. You know, when you wash your hands, you gotta wash your forearms too, buddy. You know, hand sanitizer. You could buy it. You could buy it in bulk, $50 orders, 20% off if you use the promo code 1000comics. That's all you got to do is use the promo code 1000 comics. COMICS. 1000 comics. Just the way it's spelled, how you're viewing it on your device or however you're listening. But yeah, you can buy hand sanitizer. Just go on that site, get 20% off 50. I'm telling you. Also, if you want to buy one of my books, you're laid up for the pandemic, why not read a few books? Renaissance Men, Pawnbrokers, and Scared Out of the Dickens are all on sale. And you could get my comedy album at Tumbleweeds. It's back. Tumbleweeds is open. The record store in Niantic, Connecticut. You can totally get my album on vinyl, maybe a t-shirt, some of my merch, all at Tumbleweeds in Niantic, Connecticut. If you want to get some of that Comic Book Men merch, I might as well throw that in too. I'm not sure when Kevin Smith's comic book store is going to be completely reopened in Red Bank, New Jersey, but I know they got a website that Ming Chen actually put up. He's got the guy that worked on this thing, viewaskew.com. This guy does it all. He's the man, Ming Chen. Enjoy, folks.
Pink butterflies, pink butterflies, pink butterflies, pink butterflies.
Tell me when. Recording started. All right. Welcome to the 1000 Comics podcast, Ming.
How are
Glad
you?
to have you on.
It's a pleasure to be here, Matt. How are you?
I'm doing all right. You know, the pandemic is I feel like it's winding down finally, you know?
It seems that way. Where are you right now?
I'm in Connecticut, and you're in your studio in Jersey, of course, right?
Yes, I am. So we're not that far from each other. Yeah, it looks like things are opening up. I think it will feel normal for me when all the comic shops are open, though, which they aren't. I know ours is not allowed to be open. What are things like in Connecticut?
They're not bad. I feel like it's not as bad as Jersey. You know, a lot of my family's down in Jersey, and you know, I listen to you guys' podcast, so I heard about, you know, Kevin Smith's comic book story, the comic book store closing for the pandemic, and I was really bummed out about that.
It's something that I never thought was going to happen. You know,
Yeah.
like who knew that society and life would kind of come to a standstill? But I always thought, all right, well, no matter what happens, you know, at least you can have the comic shops open, right? Like, what could be so bad to warn the comic book shop open? A number of years ago.
I'm sorry, a friend of mine who owns a record store here in Connecticut just opened her record store back up. So, I mean, like similar to like comic books, like how it's, you know, like kind of a niche market. Like, I just hope all the stores open back up. Like, I myself, I'm a pawnbroker, so you know, and the store's not completely shut down because it's kind of a financial institution, but I'm not able to work. I was laid off, you know.
Wow. All right. And yeah, so we work in very similar industries, and you love comics as well. But I always laugh at how and I think we kind of you kind of saw it on Comic Book Men, the pawn shop industry and the comic book industry that run somewhat parallel to each other.
Yeah. Do you remember me from Comic Book Men?
Yeah. What did you bring in?
I was the guy that brought in some of the Simpsons memorabilia.
That's right. Okay. Yeah.
And I don't think you guys used the segment because I was kind of in rough shape because I just went through a breakup at that time. And the whole premise of my story that you guys were going to use for the show was I was going to buy an engagement ring for my girlfriend by selling my Simpsons merch. And then I was like, I just completely did a 180 on the story and was like, you know, I'm just probably going to, you know, use the money to buy beer And
Right.
I think you guys just scrapped the whole segment because it was like, nah, this just seems kind of weird and sad.
I definitely relate to that though. I've sold things for beer, so for beer money, for sure, for sure. And
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, I couldn't have seen this coming. We had a hurricane roll through here a number of years ago, and even then, the stores reopened. I think 2 days later.
right.
We were
Didn't
lucky.
Mike lose like his entire comic book collection from
He
that?
he did. Yeah, water came in, flooded the whole first floor of his house, and unfortunately, that's where his comics were,
Yeah.
and pretty much
I mean,
wiped out everything.
you guys are such enthusiasts. Like, how much was that collection worth, you think?
I can't even imagine. I mean, tens of thousands of dollars for sure.
Yeah.
Like I don't think he had, he didn't have like an Amazing Fantasy 15 that got wiped away, but it was just in total everything got wiped out. He had a lot of expensive hardcovers. There's some things that were out of print that he wasn't able, that just got washed away. So, but if the true to our spirit as collectors and true to his spirit, I think Mike was like, you know what? I'll just rebuy everything and I'll buy it even better. So I'll buy all the omnibuses that I wanted. I'll buy
Right.
the hardcovers that I wanted. And he looks at it very positively. He got to meet George Perez. Right here, right behind me is the piece of artwork that George Perez did for him.
Really?
Comic book men, especially after George heard his story. And so even though it sounds bad, I think a lot of positive ended up coming out of it. So
I think a lot of positive is coming from this pandemic too. Like, as bad as it is, in the country right now, like, I don't even think it would ever been a thought to have you on my podcast. Like, it's just exciting.
yeah, I think if anything, I've noticed that one, if booking guests for podcasts has seemed to be a little easier over the last 10 weeks because no one has an excuse. It's like I know
Right.
you're home, I know you're bored, and I know a lot of the people who maybe not wouldn't ordinarily be guests on a podcast are so starved for human interaction or some
Right.
kind of attention that they'll pop on other podcasts. So, I mean, for us personally, we've always wanted to jump on other people's podcasts. I guess we never really put it out there, or we're kind of so busy here that we never even really thought of it. But I'm like, hey, why don't we offer it up? Why don't we jump on other, if
I'm glad you did, man. Well,
yeah.
just to give you a little premise of what my podcast is all about, this will be like the 43rd episode, I think.
Congratulations.
And I exclusively interview stand-up comedians. Every person I've interviewed is a stand-up comedian. And although I wouldn't really put you in that realm, I would, because there is that episode of Comic Book Men where you guys do stand-up in the stash. So I thought, Ming, he stood in front of a brick wall. He told some jokes. He's good enough to be on my podcast. I'll tell you that.
If you get up behind a mic in front of a brick wall and you bomb, you're a comedian, right? So like I didn't know what your true criteria was, but for anybody who doesn't watch Comic Book Man, we did an episode where we did a comic book themed stand up at a comic book shop, and it was three of us, me and two guys that I've worked and known for years, and we kind of took it as we do with everything. We took it as a competition. We're like, all right, well, who's the better, not only just a better stand-up comedian, but can you keep it focused on comic book themed jokes? And I thought we did okay. Like I don't really have any training. I'm not a great joke teller per se. I thought it did okay. I use it as an opportunity to make fun of my friends. So, when I say what's deader than Uncle Ben, Mike Zapsik's love life. Well, that I mean it. That's a joke, right? And in this case, Mike
that one wasn't in the episode.
Yeah.
What jokes did not make the cut for that episode?
I can only tell you one. It was told by Brian Johnson, and once you hear it, you'll know why it was cut. But Brian Johnson's joke. Brian Johnson's the guy with the big beard who was always giving me so much grief. His joke was, "What's the difference between Superman and Ming's parents?" Superman's grateful for a yellow sun. It's good. It's good.
I mean,
Good joke.
it's definitely not PC, so I can definitely see why it
It's
didn't
not
make
PC.
the cut of the episode.
It's not PC, but it's like, wow, that's actually pretty good. But yeah, you can't air that on a cable a cable network. You'll have the Asian Anti-Defamation League after you in a heartbeat. But
Yeah,
as a joke though, I was like, wow, that's actually pretty good. So,
I
but
mean,
yeah,
with
no,
what happened on Saturday Night Live, I'm surprised Brian gets away with some of the stuff how he makes fun of you
oh
on
yeah,
their podcast. You know,
yeah,
like
well,
how
yeah,
does he do it?
yeah. That's a podcast, so he doesn't. They can say whatever they want on their
I
podcast.
understand, but I feel like the cancel culture out there has really, kind of putting a wedge in what comedians can get away with. You know,
I I
as
think
I
that
mean, definitely a difference between a broadcaster and a stand-up comedian. But I don't know. What do you think?
I agree with you. I would not really like to be a comic in this day and age, just for fear of maybe saying the wrong thing. And if you're telling a joke, obviously you're joking for the most part. You're not being mean spirited, and it's probably not a reflection on how you really feel. But you yeah, you have to be careful. You have to be careful. I know even James Gunn from Guardians of the Galaxy had those weird tweets from a number of years back, and I think he's working with trauma back then. He was clearly not being he was not being racist or whatever he was being accused of. It was obviously a joke, but he almost lost his job.
Right.
The best job he ever had off of that because of Disney. And yeah, I would be, and we joke around all the time. It's for laughs. I I don't never nothing I really joke about is really mean spirited, but if somebody takes it the wrong way, we're public figures. If it got out in the wrong way, you never know what could happen. So,
Definitely.
yeah. So I imagine you as a stand-up comedian. I don't know if that's affected you at all.
Oh,
Being
of course, it's just the cancel culture has not really affected me so much as the pandemic. I just haven't been able to go out there and
yeah,
stand up, and that's made me a little stir crazy. But thank God for podcasting. You know what I mean?
it's definitely kept me sane. I'm able, to see and communicate people like this. I think I've been doing some kind of stream or podcast every day since this all started, and it's definitely keeping me in the right mindset for sure. I know it's killing you though. Getting out there, going to open mics, or getting booked for a performance, hearing that feedback, whether it be good, hopefully, but
Yeah,
even bad.
it's even eerie watching like Saturday Night Live, how they did the Saturday Night Live from home, and it's
Yeah,
like, and without people's laughter, it's almost eerie. You know what I mean?
yeah, it's too weird. And I know, as a comic, or even us, doing Comic Con panels, we look for that feedback. We want to hear laughter. We want to hear that whatever we're saying or that we've worked on, or the jokes that we worked on, uh, we want to know that they're working, that they've had some kind of effect. And
Yeah.
without it, yeah, it's definitely very, very weird. So I saw it here locally. There's a comedy club called the Stress Factory, and
Right.
I
There's a
think
stress factory in Connecticut as well.
that's right. And I think they recently started streaming performances where they'll have very limited amount of people in the room, and they'll have the comic get up in front of the brick wall and tell jokes via a live stream. And again, though, you don't hear any of the laughter, so it's very weird.
Now, after that episode where you guys did do stand up, have you ever tried it? Have you ever attempted doing it again?
So I know my friend Holly Ann is a stand-up comic in Albuquerque, and she has a podcast as well. So we recorded the podcast, and then she's like, "Hey, do you want to come with me to? There's an open mic after this." I'm like, "Oh yeah, I would love to see you perform." And I went with her, and I saw the lineup, and I'm watching these guys, and as you know, at an open mic, pretty much almost every way is terrible. That's why it's an open mic.
Right.
So I'm watching these guys, and some of them have brought on sheets of paper. They have all their jokes written down, and I was like, wow, these guys aren't that good. Like maybe I could do this. Like I didn't prepare or anything, but maybe I could do this. And I'm watching them, and I was like, I want to put my name on the list. I want to do it, and I didn't do it. And I and
You couldn't do it, man. Why
for
not? I feel
I
like
don't know.
you have such an outgoing personality.
I know. I was just
the butt of almost every joke on Comic
I
Book Man.
know. I think
You know,
had I had maybe 3 or 4 like segments or bits or even stories somewhat prepared, I would have done it. And so I didn't put my name on the list, and I regretted it for a while until I found out after it was all over, a bunch of the comics were coming up to me. They're like, "Oh man, you're Ming Chen, man. Thanks for coming to our show." And I'm like, "Oh, hey, you guys know who I am? That's cool."
yeah,
And the story going around was when I walked in and they all saw me, and I guess they knew who I was. They all got nervous.
they
Like
got
they were,
nervous.
all got nervous.
It makes sense. It really makes sense, and I think I think you should get out there, man, and try to do.
Really?
Yeah,
See,
honestly, when the pandemic's over, you should come up to Connecticut, and I'll show you around the open mic scene here, man.
I may do that, but that night I was glad I didn't get up because I was like, man, if I bombed, all these guys who were like, oh man, that's Ming Chen from Comic Man. It's like, oh man, he's not so funny in real life. That show was all bullshit. Like that, I was like, thank God I didn't get up. So, but I think with a little preparation, I would give it a shot. I know it's hard though, man. I know a lot of people just think they can just go up and tell jokes and be the next Chris Rock, and I know it's not like that. Like it's timing, drawing off the crowd, reading the crowd, and just being really good at delivery too.
But just being in front of a camera is hard. Like when I had no idea Comic Book Men would have been the experience it was when I went to do your show. I had no idea how staged it is. Really, like the producer feeds this person this line, then this person this line. I thought it was a little more authentic than it actually turned out to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Although I think everything we delivered was pretty spot on, though. I mean, that was us, so they just kind of cut in the funny parts.
Well, I feel like the best part of the show is really the banter between you guys rather than what the customers bring in. It really is what sets it apart from the pawn shop TV shows. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a good. I think it's a good mix. When I first heard that they were going to do a show, I was like, all right, this could be fun. Like I thought they just wanted to shoot at the comic book shop, but then Kevin was like, no, they want you guys in it.
I did watch the episode earlier to bone up on our interview. I watched a couple episodes. I watched the. Did you know the Funko Pop episode would be the last episode that you guys would do, or?
No, I mean, so we whenever we shot a season, like they only renewed it season to season. It wasn't like hey, we're gonna give you 3 seasons. It was always and we never found out until maybe like April the next year, the following year. So it was always like, are we coming back? Are we not? I haven't heard anything. I don't know. This might be it. So, but I think that that year, of course, it had to be that year where we had gotten everything down so smoothly. So, from the filming to just everything was just running like clockwork. And that I was like, whoa. And not only that, but Kevin had just had his heart attack and he survived. Right. And we're like, well, they can't take a TV show away from a guy who almost died, right? So
that was actually the thought process.
Yeah. So we were a little more confident that year, as opposed to all the other years that we might come back, and then we didn't. Of course, maybe we got overconfident. I don't know, but
it's odd. Like it looks like Kevin's in the best shape of his life now that I watched.
He is
the reboot, and then going back and watching Comic Book Men, it's like, holy Lord,
Yeah, he's lost a lot of weight for sure. He's in death will do that to you. Death is a good motivator if if you need to get into shape or eat better. Death is a good motivator. But yeah, we didn't know that Funko Pop figure would be the very last episode. And if that's the one we go out on, what a hell of an episode, man.
I think it was definitely a good episode to go out on. You guys all seemed like real happy to be like immortalized by these pop figures, and I thought it was definitely a good like conclusive episode.
Yeah, for sure. I mean? Yeah, and we're geeks. We're toy collectors. So, what is the ultimate goal of any toy collector is to get themselves made as their favorite toy with the packaging and all of that. And if you get even more lucky, they'll put it on the shelves and like they're actually selling a toy of you. Like
I watched the Pez episode too. I thought they were going to make Pez figures of you guys at the end of that one.
We found out why that was. So if you look at the history of Pez and every Pez dispenser that's ever come out, very rarely do they do real people. And the
Yeah.
reason they don't do real people is because real people go out and they get stupid and they get into trouble. And then when they get
Yeah.
arrested or caught with drugs or whatever, then they have to pull all of those out off the market because it's too controversial. And they're like, "What? You know what? Instead of that, instead of even having to worry about all that, we're just going to do, fictional properties as our Pez
It
dispenser."
makes sense because, like, I feel like adults buy Funkos while children buy Pez. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
I
So I
actually
think,
went to school in West Haven at the University of New Haven,
oh
and
man.
it's one town over from that Pez factory. And I used to drive through that town like every other day, and on like a hot day like today, you could smell like the whole town would smell like Pez.
Yeah, it smells like candy. It's a good smell. And that Pez factory slash museum is awesome. We had a blast there. And
I could tell how much fun you were having just from the episode. And
yeah,
it's funny because the guy's taking you on the tour, and it's like, oh, that's really how it is in that. in
yeah,
that
yeah, for sure. And the dude who kind of spearheaded the museum, he was just a collector for a while. Like he had so many Pez, and then he started working at Pez, and he was like, "Hey, can we build a museum? Like we can make it a tourist attraction." And he kind of had a I don't know how much he had to fight for it. I'm sure maybe there was a little fight, but what a great place to visit though. So for anybody
Was
near,
Walt serious when he said he wanted to work?
yeah, that's how much of a fan he was. That's much of a collector he was. So and even Brian Mariotti, the CEO, the guy who runs Funko right now, he was a huge Pez collector. He said he sold his first Pez collection to buy his first house. So
Really?
yeah,
My cousin who lives in Jersey was when we were kids. I would collect Ninja Turtle like action figures, and he would collect Pez, and it was like almost like a ongoing competition of who is like the nerdier collector of these things.
yeah, that's not fair. The Pez is they make more Pez and they're cheaper too. So
They started making those giant Pez dispensers and stuff too, though.
oh, the
Like
ones that spit out
Pez,
the
Pez
packs.
started
Yeah,
to get expensive after a while. The ones that were releasing entire
yeah,
packages,
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I like Pez dispensers. I have a few around here, but I prefer. I think Funko really hit on something with the pop vinyl figures. The I mean, a lot of that was inspired by the Japanese figures with the big eyes and everything. Um, but they got smart, man. They licensed all the right properties, and then they got enough money where they could just license everything. And
Yeah, it's interesting how since like Disney owns everything now, how a company like that's even able to exist. It's really kind of
yeah,
mind blowing.
yeah, just out of the blue, but they hit everything right at the right time. The price point, $10 for a pop figure, that's anyone can afford that. But they really dug into the heart of fandom, I think.
Yeah,
We talked to the guys behind Pez or behind Funko, and they were like, "Listen, if we find out that there's a property and there are people that are a fan of it, like we'll make it. Like we don't care if we make a huge profit off of it. If this
right.
makes people happy, especially if they're a fan, if this makes a fan happy, we'll research it, we'll buy the license, and we'll make it."
Do you
Just
have a big Funko collection yourself, or?
we're pretty big here. So in the studio here, this is the podcast studio. Between me and Mike, I think we've got probably about 200 Funko Pop figures around here.
Really?
Trying not
I
to.
I don't have any in my own place, but I do. I definitely have a few at the pawn shop. I got Stan Lee. I got Homer and the Moo Moo.
Oh yeah,
Oh, which brings me to since you guys never aired my segment of Comic Book Men,
yes,
I was hoping we could kind of recreate something like right here,
sure.
where I mean you don't actually have to buy anything that I have. I was just wondering if you could give a couple of my Simpsons items.
What do you have? I would love to see them.
Would you?
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely.
I just have a couple things I wanted to show you.
Okay. Oh man, I would love to. See, this is what we're missing by not being at the shop. So you have them. And actually since you got that, I'm going to pull out one thing too.
Okay. We're kind of bringing back Comic Book Men right here on this podcast.
We are. So that's me as a Simpson. That's done by That's done by Phil Ortiz.
I
Uh,
love it.
one of the artists on The Simpsons. So, and he drew the comic book guy behind me, saying worst
Really?
comic book guy ever. So I got that at New York Comic Con last year.
Oh, okay, so he was doing art for a lot of fans, or
Yeah. That's you could commission you. He would turn you into a Simpson for it was like $50 or $100 or something.
that's amazing. That's
Yeah.
honest. That's the other element to my podcast, which you'll see. I'll send you a link to it when it comes out. I draw a picture of a little cartoon of everybody that's on it.
Oh
So
no way, that's awesome.
yeah.
I
So,
love it.
anyways, if you were to put a price on this, what do you think it
Oh
would
man,
be?
the
This
Marge
is the
Playboy
Playboy
episode.
that came out when the Simpsons movie came out.
Yep, I remember.
It's none of the pages are stuck together, by the way. So
I listen. I no. There's a shared universe. This is a judgment-free zone here.
all right, I won't open it up to show you the pictures like Randall did in Clerks.
Right.
But if you were to put a price on that, just a ballpark guess.
I
how
mean,
much
I
do you
think
think?
a while they probably published many many issues of that copy. I don't know how many people actually kept that episode, except for Simpsons collectors. Um, I would have to look online. I would guess. Look, cover price on that is what, like $8. And you can't get it anymore. Like I
It's actually $6 is the cover price.
$6. Yeah, I would probably put that. It's probably grown to at least $20 or $30 at this point, if I were to
All
guess.
right, okay. Well, that's some comic book men stuff for you right there.
And you know what? If I had that, I think I would try to get Julie Kavner to sign it. I don't know where you would catch her, but
That would be something. Yeah, I would totally want Julie Kavner to sign my Marge Simpson Playboy.
yeah, I bet you that she would only be happy to do so.
I don't know. I feel like that's like taking it to a whole new like mommy issue level, having Julie Kavner sign my. I don't know if you remember that the segment that your producers had me wear the Simpsons
Yeah, the head.
vinyl mask.
Yeah.
I couldn't breathe like for the first 10 minutes of the shooting. I think I probably took it off. My face was beat red. I was like, I didn't want to wear that mask.
It's not very well ventilated, that mask. It's not very breathable for sure. So I remember.
Especially you're nervous. You're shooting a TV show, you
Right,
know?
sweating. It's in the middle of summer. So yeah. What else do you have there?
All right. So this item is, I actually have no idea where this came from. My ex-fiance actually gave me this. It's a wooden, kind of like one of those wooden puzzle boxes.
Okay.
Of Homer Simpson. So how it works is you can't really figure out how to open it until you take off the foot piece.
Okay.
And then it slides open like this.
Oh, that's cool.
And then this pops off. And then
You got your stash in there.
I keep some money in gold in here.
Yeah, just in case.
Just to have some cash around the house. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that thing's pretty cool. Like I've seen other puzzle boxes, but they just have some kind of ornate pattern on them.
So what do you think? Do you have to guess a price for this? What do you think it would be?
I would put that one anywhere between say $60 and $75.
Okay.
I would guess. I mean, it's not an officially licensed product. I can't imagine, but the level of craftsmanship in there is pretty ornate. I see it's nicely lacquered, and everything's cut out, and it is a puzzle box, which makes it more interesting than just say some regular box that you can lift the thing off of. So, I don't know how much you got that for.
Seems like I feel like the Simpsons items I'm showing you now are better than the ones I sold you guys at the.
I would have loved to have seen both of those. I
have one more I want to show you then.
Hey man, if we come back for some reason, you should bring those on.
This is a
wedding
Homer action figure from when Homer first met Marge.
Yes, with when she had to fight off Artie.
Yes,
Grabby Artie.
Artie Ziff, played by the great John Lovitz.
That's right.
And it's interesting. I actually just had John Lovitz do a promotional ad for me for a play I did over Zoom with some people.
That's awesome. What was that like? Did he just send in, or did you get to talk to him for a little bit?
No, I hired him over that Cameo
Oh,
site.
Cameo.
Are you on there, Ming?
I am on Cameo. If you want to book a Ming Chen greeting for you or your wife or your husband, birthdays, anniversaries, or just shout outs. Yeah, Cameo's interesting.
I mean, you're doing a whole other thing, doing a whole hour of podcasting with
Yeah.
people. I put you one notch above the Cameo people.
I agree with that. Yeah, Cameo's been fun though. But yeah, John Lovitz, him and Kevin used to John Lovitz had a comedy club in Universal City Walk in LA.
I knew about Kevin. It was the Smod Castle
The
kind
precursor.
of the live podcast that he
Yeah.
would do, right?
Yeah, Ralph Garman and Kevin would perform there every Friday night and do Hollywood Babble on there. And Kevin and Jay used to do Jay and Silent Bob Get Old there as well, that podcast. And then
Right.
Kevin went and built his own theater a year later called the
Yeah.
Smut.
Didn't Kevin didn't also get a chance to be on The Simpsons as well?
He did. He did very recently. Finally, it took him long enough, but yes.
You know, I think the part of the reason they took so long to have him on The Simpsons was because they thought the guy was this guy's silent all the time. Why would we have him? And then years later, after all his movies come out, they realize how much the guy actually talks.
Yeah, they found out. Yeah, very ironic that the guy plays a character called Silent Bob. He won't shut up. He doesn't shut up in real life. Which is
What's it like having him as a boss?
it was pretty awesome. So I'll go back to the very beginning. When I saw the movie Clerks, I fell in love with it. I made a fan website. Kevin
Really?
saw it and he ended up hiring me. So, and this was back in 1996. So it was very unlikely back then that you would attract the attention of someone that made a movie that you really liked, because there was no Twitter, there was no Facebook, there was no Instagram, there was no Google back then, there was no Amazon. Like, that's the time that we lived in.
Right.
Somebody had told him that there was a Clerks website out there. He went to an internet cafe and saw it, and he contacted me, got my contact information, and that's how we met 24 years ago. So pretty interesting story. And yeah, we built a website for his whole production company, and we put up a whole message board. So Kevin was on there.
So the View is You website, you're responsible for that?
That I built that website, yes.
I honestly, I love that website. I used to go on that website all the time when in the peak of the Askew, movies. Just because it's a really well laid out website, man.
Yeah, thanks, man. That was all Kevin's direction. What he really wanted was a place where he could go and interact with his fans online,
Right.
and that's what we built, and that was cool. So a few years after that, he ended up hiring me full time, and Kevin's he's as cool as you think he would be in real life. Like, none of that is an act. He's that funny guy, that is cracking jokes and writing awesome screenplays and comic books. And I always loved him because he was a fan of the same stuff I was a fan of, Star Wars and comics and just pop culture in general. I guess the difference between me and him was he actually got to meet a lot of the creators and a lot of the people who were involved in all these properties that I love so much. And I always thought that was cool. And it was cool. He put me into the movie Dogma. I got to be in there for a couple seconds.
I actually read that yesterday, and where are you in Dogma?
So there's a scene where Jay and Silent Bob and Linda Fiorentino and Bethany, they go into a strip club and they meet Salma Hayek, and she's
Right.
stripping. I'm sitting next to Jay and Silent Bob in the strip club. So
Okay, I haven't watched the movie in a while, probably since before Comic Book Men was a thing. So I probably would be able to spot you now. At
yeah,
this point.
and you have to watch the widescreen version to see me. Otherwise, they crop the in the
Really.
when the old TVs were square, they would crop the picture, and I got cut out of that version.
How disappointing was that? When you
It wasn't
that?
that disappointing, because in the theater you saw me. If you watch the movie in the theater, now if you watch it on widescreen DVD, you see me.
Right.
So any lame-o who watched the TV version, like, big deal. I didn't really care that they couldn't see me. So
I got you.
Yeah, so that was
So no one was calling you up like, "Hey, I watched the movie. I didn't see you in it."
couple people did, and I'm like, wait a minute, are you not watching the widescreen DVD? They're like, no, we're watching the square VHS copy. I'm like, all right, well, I'm gonna hang up on you now. So, um, but yeah, working with Kevin, you never know what's gonna happen. He might be like, hey, I want you to start a podcast. I was like, I'm not a podcaster. He's like, well, you are now because I told you to start a podcast. Or it could be like, hey, we're gonna put you on TV with three of your idiot friends, and that's gonna be a TV show. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like how much weed did you smoke today? Because that sounds like a horrible idea. But it all worked out. Yeah, he as self-deprecating as Kevin is, he's always thinking two steps ahead of everybody else.
Yeah.
Um, he knew to build a website before anybody else did. He knew to start
Definitely
podcasting.
one of the most outside the box
Yep.
people, and I feel like in the world. Like it must be surreal. A lot of it.
It is. It is. Although I mean, knowing Kevin for so long, I know like he can do whatever not only can he do whatever he wants, he will do whatever he wants. You know? So if he wants to make a movie about a guy who gets turned into a walrus, and that sounds crazy, but he did, and it's called Tusk, and it's a brilliant movie.
I finally saw that movie. I've been able to watch I've been watching a lot of television and movies since this pandemic started, and I finally got a chance to watch Tusk, and I was so psyched that not only was it about a podcaster,
Yep.
but it was. I thought it was about a guy who turned into a walrus. I didn't realize it was going to be that Silence of the Lambs like freaky movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. And I was like, wow, I've never seen a movie like this before, for sure. So, and you're right. It was all based off of a story that he read on Smodcast, and he turned into a movie. But even with Clerks, who takes out 10 credit cards and shoots in a convenience store in black and white?
Right.
Like, who would even attempt that? But he did.
I was so inspired by Clerks. One of the things that happened when I was we filmed that segment for Comic Book Man, I brought Walt a screenplay that I wrote for called Pawnbrokers, which I've turned into a play that I actually sell on Amazon.com now.
Nice.
But I told him, and I think I told all you guys, I was really inspired by Clerks. In college, I wrote this screenplay about the pawn shop I work at called Pawnbrokers. And, I feel like, Kevin has inspired a lot of the stuff I do, in comedy whatsoever. And you too, for that matter. You guys just brighten up my day when I watch your show,
Thanks, man. I'm glad we don't do the opposite where we make you feel worse. For sure. But yeah, I think working with Kevin, like, you never know what's gonna come next. He might be like, hey, I want you to shoot a rocket up to the moon. I'm like, all right, I guess I'll learn some astrophysics or something. Yeah, you never know. Like, anything he comes out with usually comes true. Like, even if he's joking around about it. So yeah, I was like, hey, I'm gonna put you four knuckleheads on TV, and you're gonna come on after The Walking Dead. And I'm like, what? Yeah,
so but here's a nerdy question for you.
Yeah.
Marvel or DC, man? Which one do you go?
So when I was growing up as a kid, definitely a Marvel kid. My first comic book was Avengers 214. So that was my introduction to the comic book world, and comics itself was the Avengers. So Captain America, Iron Man, Tigra, that lineup. That really got me into comic books. And then later on, Spider-Man. Later on after that, I learned about this little 5'3" hairy dude with adamantium claws. And I was like, who's that? And my friend was like, that's Wolverine. I'm like, wait, he's 5'3"? Wow, he's short like me. That's pretty cool. And and these claws, like, yeah, they're made out of pretty much the strongest metal on earth called adamantium, and he regenerates. Like, this is awesome. And then I learned about the rest of the X-Men, that they also had powers, and I was like, whoa, this is really cool. So I was definitely like Marvel everything, pretty much most of my childhood up until maybe about the beginning of high school. Like, just all the Marvel characters were so cool, I thought.
Right.
And I liked that they had teams. So, you didn't have to focus on just one character.
Right.
You could like a whole group of them. So definitely Avengers and X-Men were some of my favorites. But I love Spider-Man just like any other most kids did. But then in high school, I had a friend who had all the he was into all comics, but I remember he had Dark Knight Returns. And I'm like, what? I'm like, what's this? He's like, dude, just read it. And I did. It's like, holy crap, this is not like the bright color like tights, kind of cartoony villains. Like this is the Joker, and like this is real. This is
Yeah.
crazy. He's like, dude, this. I'm like, is there more of this? He's like, yeah, this is kind of how comics are going now. There's
I,
gonna be
I got to agree with you. I think that DC. I think I lean more towards DC because the villains in Batman. I think Batman alone, the
yep,
villains are almost Shakespearean.
yeah,
It's their whatever their default or thing that makes them a deformed human
yep,
or not deformity like a mutant, but deformed in the mind. Makes them what they are. Almost like when I say Shakespearean, I kind of mean like if you read the play Richard the Third.
yeah.
I feel like they all kind of have that Shakespearean thing. Like it's very, the human experience just is magnified. I think.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the Batman villain is definitely way more three-dimensional than most villains you would read out there. I mean, most of them were just, and it's a comic book, but they were very cartoony though. But the Batman villains, like I think I could even relate to some of their pain. Not all of them, but some of their pain you can definitely relate to. And I was like, wow, these are real villains. These villains scare me. These villains are awesome, and I want to see Batman either defeat them or get his ass kicked by them. Like I'm not
Yeah,
really. Sometimes you rooted for the villain at times,
true.
and I thought that was awesome. And once I saw DC and some of their storylines were a little more darker than the Marvel ones, and I was getting into that high school, college. That's what I wanted to read. I drifted more into DC later on in life. So,
What's like the best Batman comic in your opinion?
whew, that's tough. Like I'm a really big fan of Frank Miller. Like Year One is a great graphic
Yeah,
novel.
Frank Miller. Year
Hush,
one, I think year one is up there. Alan Moore, I love reading anything Alan Moore
yeah,
wrote. You know,
yeah. I kind of I love all his stories. I kind of wish he was a little more like he just seems bitter. He hates everything, and he doesn't want anything turn. He doesn't want anyone to
that's
talk.
what I like in a writer, though. I like the bitterness.
Yeah, but I mean, as a creator, as a fan, like I would love it, like if he went to cons and we could meet him and get an
Yeah,
autograph. But he's not. That's so beyond what he wants to do, and like he doesn't want to talk to anybody. It seems like, and I'm like, okay, I
yeah.
can definitely
Even that
respect.
episode of The Simpsons, we have that at least.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. But other than that, yeah, it's pretty hard to pull him out of his like hermit's cave, I guess, in England.
What was it like having Stan Lee on the set of that show?
Stan was awesome. And I didn't think he would ever come on the show. I knew he had a really good relationship with Kevin, but all of a sudden they're like, "Hey, I think Stan Lee's going to come on the show." I'm like, "Get out of here! No way! He's going to fly from California to be on our silly TV show." But yeah, it happened. So it was cool. So when we shot it, they're like, "All right, Stan's going to pull up in a limo. He's going to come in. We want you to greet him at the front door and then bring him to the back where the other guys are."
Right?
Oh man, I get to make first contact. Like I get to
Were
greet.
you nervous?
Oh yeah, yeah. I was definitely nervous. This is Stan Lee. He created my everything that I love in life.
You created your childhood,
He
basically.
created, and I'd seen him on TV and I saw him in Mallrats, and he seemed like a really cool guy, like very upbeat, and Excelsior and all that. I was like, all right, this could be cool, but man, what a nerve wracking experience. Because to me, he's like God. He
Yeah,
what does a god do? A god creates things. Well, Stan
yeah.
Lee created things. He's like a god of our world. So, and it was even like when he opened that door and he came in, it was funny because he was like backlit. It was a sunny day, so he's
Right.
all backlit by the sun. So he did kind of look like a deity, like a god walking in the door.
So that was the surreal moment,
Yep.
of work. That's
Oh,
that's
for sure.
amazing.
Yeah,
So
but
it was everything you hoped it would be and more,
oh
basically.
yeah, but literally he was, he came, he was like, "Hey, how are you?" I'm like, "Hey, Mr. Lee, great to meet you. Come on back. Let me introduce you to the rest of the guys." And it was cool. He answered all our stupid questions.
Hmm.
I remember there was a break where like, "Hey, Mr. Lee, would you mind signing like one or two things for us?" But that pile, of course, everyone wanted in on that, so that pile grew and grew, and he
Right.
signed all of it without hesitation. Didn't complain, and he was just a great guy. We're very fortunate because he hung out. He hung out with us for maybe 3 or 4 hours that day, which is which is a blessing because if you met him at a Comic Con, you would get maybe a minute with him, if that. Like usually
Yeah.
not even that long.
I just love how you guys are all sitting on the floor like
Yeah.
children
Yep.
listening to him. That was great. And
Uh,
but you did a couple episodes, right?
yeah, he did too. We brought him back when one of our longtime comic book reservists decided he kind of fell out of love with comics, and one, we didn't want to see him fall out of love with comics, but two, we didn't want to lose his pull list every week. So,
Right.
because that was a good chunk. So we got Stan to come down and surprise him, and he's back. He's been coming back ever since. So
That's
you can't
amazing.
you can't get Stan Lee for one of your customers and not shop there anymore, right? So, um, yeah, that was cool. And then after that, we would see him at Comic Cons every so often, and he would greet us. And I think a lot of people had liked those 2 episodes of Comic Book Man. So we were very, very lucky.
How do
He
you
was,
feel about the Marvel movies nowadays? Do you think they're a little too commercialized, or are you really into them?
I mean, what's the last one that was out there? Endgame, I guess. Endgame was awesome.
Yeah.
If they and Endgame was perfectly architected, perfectly written. That scene where they're all coming out of the Doctor Strange portals, and Captain America, he grabs a hammer and he says, "Avengers Assemble."
Right.
That's our childhood come to life right there.
Yeah.
That was that was
I just wish Disney's ownership of Marvel would be like, if they're going to own Marvel, like let's. I want them to own everything.
right.
I want to be able to go onto Disney Plus and watch the old Punisher movie from like the '80s. You know
I
what I mean?
I agree, and they should put that out there. It's it might not be awesome, but it's historical. And I think there's a quote out there is like, we learn history so we don't repeat it. Well, we don't want David Hasselhoff as Nick Fury again. We don't want Dolph Lundgren as a Punisher again. But that's what we had back then. That's you have something to compare it
And
to.
you say you can't do stand up, Ming. That's come
Nah.
on.
Yeah, so I love what they've done with the Avengers and the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Cinematic Universe so far has been brilliant. It's been great. There have been a couple not so great ones. Iron Man 3 is not awesome. Dark World is not awesome, but
Just
listen,
to think though that you were in the movie, you're in a show that features Stan Lee. You were in a movie that had, in my opinion, one of the greatest comedians of all time, George Carlin.
yes.
I,
I'm
isn't,
very
isn't
lucky.
that amazing to be able to transcend like these great figures?
I'm very
Who's your
lucky.
favorite comedian?
Um, that's a great question. I really I was really into Saturday Night Live in the early '90s. So, and I thought that lineup was great. It was, Dana Carvey, Chris Rock, I think Will Ferrell, um, Adam
Farley?
Sandler, Farley, yeah, all those guys. I think if I were to name it now, I think Chris Rock's probably my favorite comedian. I just love his delivery. I
Yeah,
love his like I don't give a shit attitude.
and
And
he's also in Dogma too. So
yeah, I got to meet him during that scene I shot. You'll see
yeah,
him walk behind me, he pats me on the head, and he leaves. And I was like, "Holy shit, Chris Rock touched me!" Like that's cool. So, um, yeah, I like. I think Chris Rock has probably got to definitely be other. I mean, Carlin's up there too for sure. Carlin's a genius, and the way his delivery, his stories, and even I think a good mark of a good stand-up comedian, like if they have a recorded performance, like audio or video, and you can get into that without being there. 'Cause I think stand-up comedy, a lot of the experience is actually being there, being in the
right.
same room and watching and seeing these guys. But if they can transcend that and just even translate their comedy into an audio or video format, and so I remember listening. There's a Carlin record. I think
Right.
my friend had it, and he would roll it when I would come over. And if you can do that, that's pretty awesome. So I think
I have almost all his albums. Yeah.
that's awesome. I think so. I think him, like Eddie Murphy, Chris Rock, like guys like that can even off of vinyl record, they can be awesome and funny. I think that says a lot.
Oh, and
Um,
that just made me want to show you a couple things I got right up here on the wall.
it's you're in the vault, man. You got some good stuff up there.
One thing I have on the wall is George
Oh
Carlin
yeah,
on the road,
yeah.
and this is my comedy album, which I named after
Oh, that's awesome.
George
You're on.
Carlin's album, Class Clown, but Class Clown Revisited with
That's awesome.
Matt Heath. That's my comedy album.
That's awesome.
And
You were on vinyl. You have transcended that comedy nirvana. You put out your own album.
it was one of my bucket list things, and I had to
That's
do it.
so cool. That's awesome.
Ming, I have to say, like, I think that all of your experiences in life, being in that movie with Chris Rock and George Carlin and working with Kevin Smith, I feel like you've absorbed so much. You need to give back and do the stand up comedy. I think you'd be good at it, man.
Let me work on it. My friend Holly in Albuquerque, she runs her own stand up. It's at a speakeasy every Monday. And
Right.
the response I saw the last time I was out there was awesome. And I got so inspired by that. Like we were going to do our own stand-up night at the podcast studio. And unfortunately we didn't get to it before the pandemic, but I think we're going to still do that. And yeah, I think I might start grabbing the mic. Who cares if I suck, right? So you gotta work on it. It's a craft.
It's a process. It's
Yeah.
a process, and especially at open mics. Open mics are like batting practice. You can't bomb at an open mic. It's there for comedians to practice.
Right.
You know
So
what I mean?
I think our goal is that where we go and do the same open mic one day. I would love to do that.
Definitely. Let's do it, man.
Fantastic.
Let me know. Let me know when you're ready, and I'll be there.
Let me
We're only a couple states away.
yeah, let me work on some bits for sure then. I at the very least I could probably get some good stories about, buying weed for Kevin and the
There you go. That's perfect. Can you tell one right now?
Yes, I will tell you a story about buying weed for Kevin. So, back before everything became legal and before it was legalized in California, and it's still not legal here, whenever Kevin would fly here for something, he would need weed when he got to his destination here. And he would usually have some guy get it for him. He had a guy, except one day his guy was out of town or something. So, one Sunday afternoon, he called me up. He was like, "Hey, I need you to drive to Long Island, and I need you to go to this Jewish deli, and there's going to be this guy there, and he's got my weed. Like, I need you to grab that weed and bring it back to me at the Four Seasons Hotel in New York City when I land, so I have my weed." And I'm like, "Well, what happened to your other guy?" And he's like, "Well, my other guy's out of town. Like, can you do me this favor?" And I'm like, "Listen, I run all your websites for you. I'm like." I'm doing all your online merchandise. Like, do you really like? I don't.
You don't want to be the weed guy.
I didn't want to be the weed guy, but he was like, "Listen, you're my only hope, Obi-Wan." I'm like, "All right, fine." So I get in the car, I drive an hour all the way to Long Island, and I park my car in a Jewish deli, and he said, purple BMW is going to pull up next to you. That's the guy. Go and get the weed pay him and get the weed for me. I'm like, "Oh man, this is so weird." So I don't know what I'm doing. I didn't really smoke weed back then. I had nothing to do with it, but this is a favor for Kevin, guy who got me a job, guy who would later put me on TV. Of course I'll help him out, even though this is very shady. So I get there, car pulls up, I get out, I get in the passenger seat and I meet the guy, nondescript guy, and we're making small talk, and also as he's talking, he pulls out a bundle and he puts it between us, and I'm like, "Oh well, I guess that must be it." He didn't say anything, but that must be it. So I grabbed the bundle, I put it in the bag I had with me. I give him the money, and I'm like, "All right, thanks, man. I guess have a great night." He was like, "Whoa, hey, hang on, aren't you forgetting something?" I'm like, "No, I don't think so." "What?" He was like, "Well, here." He hands me a FedEx envelope. And he's like, "Well, here's what you came for." I'm like, "Oh, all right, thanks." And I grab it and I went out of there. I'm like, "We're done. My job here is done." That's it. I'm like, "All right, thanks. See you later. Bye."
What did you take initially?
Rush out of the car. I'm in my car and about to. He drives off. I'm about to drive away, and then all of a sudden I get a phone call, and it's the dude. And I'm like, "Hey, what's going on? What's going on? Did you forget something?" He's like, "Hey, I when you were in my car, is there any chance that you grabbed my sandwich? Because I had stopped at Whole Foods before this. I got my dinner and now I can't find it anymore. And there's no chance that you grabbed it, is it?" I'm like, "Actually, as a matter of fact, yeah, I think I do have your sandwich. If you want to come back, I'll get it back to you." So here's the thing: sandwich was like this big. If that was the weed, that would have been like what, 2, 3 ounces, like a pound maybe. Like, and all he wanted was what fit into a FedEx mailing envelope. I didn't know. I didn't know how much weed he was buying. He didn't tell me. So I literally grabbed this dude's sandwich. I thought it thinking it was a brick of weed, and I almost left with it. And the poor guy almost starved to death. But like, this is why you don't see me on
I
a
just love that story just because I feel like people in Jersey, like people that don't do drugs in Jersey or never smoked weed, don't mess with that kind of stuff.
yeah.
The element of fear from the television show The Sopranos, like
Yep.
the element of a drug dealer, it's like hey, you're so new to a situation like this, like
Yeah, I didn't know, and
sandwich.
I didn't know, and I never want to do it again. You know, like how was I supposed to know? I thought that was like the secret symbol. Like, here you go. I didn't know. Why would you put your sandwich there? But he did, and why
Now,
wouldn't I?
was Kevin dying laughing when you told him the story?
He thought it was pretty funny. Yes, he thought it was pretty funny. But luckily, he never really sent me on. Was that true? I think maybe I did it once or twice after that, but they were way more low pressure situations after
Like
that.
they brought it to you.
Something like that, or yeah, I think one time he hid a bunch of weed and it was in a coffee bag, like a pound of coffee. Like he
Yeah.
wanted me to bring it back to New Jersey. I'm like, all right, I got this. So like like nothing will be as scary, as intimidating that as that stupid sandwich. So
Well, if you need me to bring some weed down for Kevin, I could always just stop at a dispensary up. I'm only 10 minutes away from the Mass border, so
yeah, see, for him, it's it's legal in California now. Like either we don't have to jump through these hoops anymore for the most part. So and he found a way now. I think he's found some kind of secret way to ship it to himself now into a non-legal state. Probably, who cares anymore? It's weed.
I mean, there's strains of weed named after the guy now. It's
Right,
pretty amazing.
right. There's Jan Sam Bob weed out there, so I think he's pretty well hooked up at this point.
Yeah. So I think there was maybe let's see. I just want to see if there's any questions I
Yeah, go
skipped
for it.
over that I wanted to
Go for it.
ask you. Um, um, what's your favorite item that ever came through the store?
Definitely got to be the GI Joe USS Flag aircraft carrier. That seven
Yeah.
foot long aircraft carrier toy. That was something that I've wanted since I was 9 years old, and I never got it. And then literally 30 years later, I got to buy it. And
So that was the childhood bucket list item that you had to have.
I mean, it was childhood and then beyond. I never thought I'd really have an opportunity to buy it later on in life. And you never, when you really want something and you don't get it, you still want it. You know, you you never really lose that desire for it. So 30 years later, I got to buy it. And it was cool that they got to document it on TV. And people were like, "Did you really buy it?" I'm like, "Hell yeah, I bought it." Guy gave me what I thought was a good price. He threw in a bunch of extra stuff, and I ended up buying it for $550, which is 5 times what it was worth back in the day. I really should have bought it. My mom really should have bought it for me back in the day, but whatever. And yeah, it was. You know what though? Buying it later in life, with your own money and kind of negotiating for it, I think is actually a more fulfilling experience. So, but that was probably one of my favorite items for sure. I I love that thing. That thing is awesome. Like they've never built a toy that big ever again. I don't think so.
Where do you have it now?
So I had it in the basement. I had it in the basement of the store for a while. So here's the story behind that. I wanted to set it up. I wanted to show my kids. I wanted to play with it, and
Right.
then shortly after I bought it, I was like, oh crap! Like where am I gonna put this thing? it's literally as long as like a buffet table, like a poker table.
Right.
I was like, wow, no wonder this was a rich kid's toy. Like you needed to be in a mansion to own it.
Right.
It needed its
Like it
own
was the kid on silver spoons. He's the only one that had
exactly.
one, basically.
Yeah, you need to be Ricky Schroeder to have the USA flag. So it was in the basement for a while, and it was in pieces, which kind of stunk. And I was going to take it to storage until I could figure out where to put this thing. And somewhere between that, Walt was like, "Dude, can you get this thing out of the basement? It's taking up space. We need the space for more Funko Pop figures, like whatever." And I ended up building it back up in the store, kind of as hey, make me an offer kind of thing. Like I didn't want to sell it, but I wanted to see if maybe there's a real collector out there that would give me a good price. And one day this dude walked in. He was like, "Hey, that's pretty cool. Like, are you selling it?" I'm like, "No, I don't really want to, but what's your offer?" He's like, "All right, I'll tell you what. I'll give you X amount for it. And rest assured, I love GI Joe. I'm a GI Joe collector." So he's like, "Hey, I'll pay you X amount for it. Also, I'm opening up a brewery nearby, and if you sell it to me, I'll just give you free beer for life." And I'm like, "Wow, this could actually pay for itself if I drink enough beer." And he was like, "Hey, anytime you want to come see it at my house, like, you can come over and see it." And I was like, "Wow, that's actually not a bad offer. Like, no one's ever going to offer me free beer for something." So
I mean, free beer for life. I think it's a no-brainer right there.
So I ended up selling it to him. But not only that, our podcast studio now, like he agreed to sponsor it. So he's one of our sponsors here. So it all worked out.
Isn't that amazing though? How that came full circle?
Yeah.
I told you guys my Simpsons stuff to buy beer, and your favorite item ended up being yours.
Basically for free beer. So yeah,
beer money.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
So that's at the end of the day, I feel like you guys over at Comic Book Men and all the stuff you guys do, I'm so glad that you show your inner child on television for all of us to enjoy. And I want to thank you so much for being on the podcast, man.
Dude,
I really appreciate it.
Of course. And anytime you come back, you're welcome to come back, of course, to the store. We would love to podcast with you in person at the studio. And yeah, it's great seeing you again, my friend.
Hey, I guess that's it. Thank you for being on 1000 Comics Podcast, man.
Thank you, my friend. So here, I'm going to end the recording.
Butterfly.